I'm so glad you're here. Before we start, I need you to understand that what I'm about to tell you isn't a work of fiction. It's a story that shattered my reality. A story that began with a simple phone call and spiraled into a nightmare that I'm still trying to fully comprehend. It's a story about trust, about the faces we think we know, and the terrifying secrets that can hide behind the most familiar smiles. I'm telling you this because I need to get it out, but also as a warning. Sometimes, the most impossible things are the ones that are terrifyingly real. My name is Frank, and until 3 months ago, my life was a predictable. That's the best word for it. After 35 years as a homicide detective with the Boston PD, predictable was a paradise I had earned. My days were measured by the slow drip of my coffee maker in the morning, the satisfying heft of the newspaper in my hands, and the quiet company of my golden retriever, Buster. My house, a small but sturdy Cape Cod in a quiet suburb, was my fortress of solitude. The ghosts of old cases, the faces of victims and suspects, they rarely breached its walls anymore. I had my garden in the summer, my fireplace in the winter, and my weekly calls with my son, Leo. That was my life. Simple, safe. Leo is my only child, my pride and joy. He didn't follow me into the force, something my late wife, Helen, was eternally grateful for. Instead, he took to the skies. He's a captain for a major international airline, flying 787 seconds to London, Tokyo, Dubai, places that sounded like fantasy lands to an old beat cop like me. He inherited his mother's calm demeanor and her sharp mind, qualities that made him a phenomenal pilot. He was steady, reliable, and the kind of man you could bet your life on. I know, because I often did. And then there was Clara, Leo's wife, my daughter-in-law. If you were to ask me to describe the perfect partner for my son, I would have described Clara without knowing it. She was sunshine poured into a human form, kind, intelligent, with a laugh that could make the most cynical detective believe in goodness again. She was a freelance graphic designer, working from the beautiful home they'd bought just a town over. She adored Leo, and he, in turn, worshipped the ground she walked on. They were the perfect couple, the kind you see in commercials, and their happiness was the bedrock of my own peaceful retirement. I saw them every Sunday for dinner. Clara would bring a homemade dessert. Leo would grill steaks, and for a few hours, I'd feel Helen's presence there with us, smiling at the beautiful family we'd built. This particular Tuesday started like any other. The autumn air was crisp, and the leaves on the great oak in my front yard were a riot of orange and red. I'd finished my coffee, taken Buster for a long walk through the woods, and was settling into my favorite leather armchair to tackle the crossword puzzle. My phone buzzed on the side table. It was Leo. I smiled, figuring it was his pre-flight check-in. He always called me before a long haul. "Hey, kiddo," I answered, clicking my pen. "Ready to take on the Atlantic?" But the voice that came back wasn't Leo's usual calm, confident tone. It was tight, strained, like a wire pulled taut. "Dad? Dad, I have a weird question." I sat up straighter, my detective senses, long dormant, twitching back to life. "What's wrong, Leo? You sound off." "No, I'm fine. The pre-flight check was fine. We're still on the tarmac at Logan, waiting for the last of the baggage to be loaded. It's just, something's happening here, and I can't make it make sense. Talk to me, son. What's going on?" He took a deep breath. I could hear the faint murmur of airport announcements in the background. "It's Clara, Dad." My heart gave a little jolt. "Clara? What about her? I just spoke to her this morning. She said she was feeling under the weather, a bit of a stomach bug. She was staying home, curled up on the couch." There was a pause on the other end of the line, a silence so heavy it felt like a physical weight. When Leo finally spoke, his voice was a raw whisper, laced with a confusion that bordered on panic. "Dad, that's impossible." Impossible? What's impossible? I talked to her not 3 hours ago. She sounded miserable. Said she was going to sleep it off. No, Dad, you don't understand, he said, his voice cracking. It's impossible that she's at home. It's absolutely, 100% impossible. I felt a cold dread begin to creep up my spine. This wasn't a joke. This was my son. A man trained to handle life or death situations at 40,000 feet, sounding like he was about to unravel. Leo, slow down. Tell me exactly what you mean. He let out a shaky, incredulous laugh. I mean, she's here, Dad. Clara is on my flight. I think my brain just stopped working for a second. I stared at the half-finished crossword puzzle, the words blurring into meaningless black squares. Buster whined softly at my feet, sensing the sudden tension in the room. On your flight? Leo, that's not possible. I told you, she's sick. She's at home, in bed. Dad, I'm looking right at her, he hissed, his voice dropping lower as if he was afraid of being overheard. Not at her, exactly. I'm in the cockpit, but one of the flight attendants just came up. Sarah. She's known Clara for years, seen her at our Christmas parties. She came up to tell me how nice it was that Clara was surprising me on the London layover. She said Clara was sitting in business class, seat 4 amperes. Said she looked great, but maybe a little pale. Sarah even said she waved at her. A whiff. My own breath hitched in my chest. This had to be a mistake. A cruel, bizarre misunderstanding. A look-alike, Leo. It has to be a look-alike. You know how it is. People have doubles. That's what I thought, Dad. That's exactly what I told Sarah. But she just looked at me funny and said, Leo, I've known your wife for 5 years. She's wearing the emerald pendant you gave her for your anniversary. It's her. So I had her discreetly take a photo on her phone when she went back to offer pre-flight champagne. I waited, my knuckles white as I gripped the phone. I heard a small ping as a message came through. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone trying to open it, and there she was. It was a slightly blurry photo, taken from an angle, but it was unmistakably, unequivocally Clara. Her gentle profile, the curve of her jaw, the way her dark hair fell over her shoulder. And there, glinting against her collarbone, was the emerald pendant. The one I'd helped Leo pick out. A one-of-a-kind piece from a local artisan. But her expression, it was wrong. It was hard, closed off, a million miles away from the warm, open face of the woman who baked apple pies in my kitchen. She was staring out the window, a look of intense, cold concentration on her face. Leo, I whispered, the name catching in my throat. You see it, right, Dad? It's her. But it can't be her. So who is it? And why is she pretending to be my wife? The flight manifest has her name, Clara Thompson. All her details, her passport number. It's all correct. I checked it myself. But you're telling me my wife is at home, sick on the couch. So what the hell is going on? My mind, the old detective's mind, was screaming. It was a whirlwind of impossibilities, a paradox that defied logic. 2 places at once. A sick woman at home, and her exact double, wearing her unique necklace, on a plane to London, using her passport. It was the kind of riddle that would have been laughed out of the precinct. Dad, I have to go. They're closing the doors. We're about to push back. What do I do? Do I confront her? Do I call security? The instincts honed over a lifetime kicked in, cutting through the fog of my shock. No, I said, my voice suddenly firm, clear. You do nothing. You fly that plane, son. You fly it like it's any other day. You don't go back there. You don't talk to her. You don't let anyone know that you know. We don't know what this is, who this person is, or what she's capable of. You are in command of a plane with 300 souls on board. Your only job is to get them to London safely. Do you understand me? But Dad, do you understand me, Captain? I used his title, a calculated move to remind him of his duty, to pull him back from the emotional precipice. There was a long, tense beat of silence. Yes, sir, he finally said. his voice regaining a fraction of its professional steel. I understand. I'll call you when I land. Good. I'm going to go over to your house right now. I'm going to check on Clara. I'm going to figure this out. Just be safe, Leo. You too, Dad. The line went dead. I sat there in my armchair, the silence of the house suddenly deafening. The phone felt cold and heavy in my hand. Outside, a gust of wind sent a shower of red and orange leaves scattering across my lawn, a beautiful, ordinary autumn day. But inside my house, inside my head, a storm was raging. My son was 40,000 feet in the air, trapped in a metal tube with a woman wearing his wife's face. And my real daughter-in-law, the woman I loved like my own, was just a few miles away, supposedly sick in her bed. And I, the retired detective who thought he'd seen it all, had to face the chilling, undeniable truth. One of them was a lie. And I had no idea which one was more dangerous. If you like my story, and you want to follow me on this journey to uncover the truth, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I have a feeling this story is only just beginning, and I'm going to need all the support I can get. The 10-minute drive to Leo and Clara's house felt like an eternity. Every stoplight was a personal torment. Every slow-moving car in front of me, a test of my fraying patience. My mind was a chaotic landscape of flashing blue lights and yellow tape, a place I hadn't visited in years. I kept replaying the conversation with Leo, his panicked voice echoing in my ears. I kept picturing that photograph, the woman in seat 4 amperes with Clara's face and a stranger's eyes. Who was she? And what was her game? Robbery? Espionage? The old cop in me was spinning wild theories, each more outlandish than the last. But the father in me was gripped by a much more primal fear. A fear for my son, and for the sweet woman he'd married. Their house was a charming colonial on a quiet, tree-lined street, the kind of place where neighbors waved and kids left their bikes on the lawn. It was a picture of suburban tranquility, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside me. I pulled into their driveway, my tires crunching on the gravel, and killed the engine. For a moment, I just sat there, my hands gripping the steering wheel, and stared at the front door. What was I about to walk into? Was Clara really sick inside? Or was she part of this elaborate, terrifying charade? The thought was a venomous whisper in my mind, a betrayal I couldn't bear to consider, but one my training wouldn't let me ignore. In my line of work, you learn that no one is above suspicion, not even the ones you love. Taking a deep breath, I got out of the car. I used the spare key they'd given me, the cold metal feeling foreign in my trembling hand. The lock clicked open with an unnerving loudness in the quiet afternoon. "Clara?" I called out, my voice hoarse. "It's Frank. I came to check on you." The house was still and silent. The air was cool, and the only light came from the slivers of sun peeking through the drawn blinds. I found her in the living room, curled up on their oversized sectional sofa, buried under a mountain of blankets. A half-empty mug of tea sat on the coaster beside her, and a box of tissues was on the floor. She was fast asleep. I stood there for a long moment, just watching her. She looked small and fragile under the covers, her face pale, her breathing soft and even. This was the Clara I knew. This was the woman who fussed over my diet and remembered the anniversary of my wife's passing every single year. She looked sick. Genuinely, authentically sick. I gently touched her forehead. It was clammy and cool, not feverish. She stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. When she saw me, a weak smile touched her lips. "Frank," she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. "What are you doing here? I must have dozed off." "Leo was worried," I said, choosing my words carefully. "He told me you were feeling ill, so I thought I'd pop over and see if you needed anything. A good father-in-law's duty, right?" She tried to sit up, wincing as she pressed a hand to her stomach. "Oh, that's so sweet of you, but I'm fine. Just some awful stomach bug. I haven't been able to keep anything down all day. I think I'm just dehydrated." She looked exhausted. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her skin had a pallid, washed-out quality. There was no act here. This wasn't the performance of a master criminal. This was a woman who was genuinely unwell, which only made the situation 1,000 times more terrifying. "Can I get you anything?" I asked, my mind racing. "Some more tea? Some crackers?" No, I'm okay. I just want to sleep. I feel so drained." She snuggled back down into the blankets, her eyes already closing. "Tell Leo not to worry, okay? I'll be fine by the time he gets back from London." London. The word hung in the air between us. She said it so casually, so innocently, as if it weren't the destination of a phantom who had stolen her face. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had to know for sure. I had to find something, some piece of evidence that could anchor me in this sea of insanity. "All right, you get some rest," I said, forcing a warm tone. "I'm just going to use your bathroom before I head out." I walked down the hall, my footsteps echoing on the polished hardwood floors. But instead of turning into the guest bathroom, I went straight to their master bedroom. The room was neat, the bed perfectly made. A sense of calm pervaded the space, Clara's calm. On her nightstand was a book, a glass of water, and her cell phone, plugged into its charger. I hesitated for only a second before picking it up. My hands felt slick with sweat. This was a violation, a breach of the trust she and Leo had placed in me. But what choice did I have? I powered it on. Her background was a smiling photo of her and Leo on a beach, the picture of happiness. I quickly checked her recent calls and messages. There was my call from that morning. A few texts from her friends asking how she was feeling. A group chat with her book club. Nothing. Nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing that suggested a secret life or a sinister plot. My eyes then fell on her jewelry box, an antique wooden chest sitting on her dresser. With a sense of dread, I walked over and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on black velvet, were her favorite pieces: earrings, bracelets, a pearl necklace Helen had given her. And there, in its own designated slot, was the silver chain for her emerald pendant. But the pendant itself was gone. A wave of nausea washed over me. Sarah, the flight attendant, had been certain. "She's wearing the emerald pendant you gave her for your anniversary." It could be a coincidence. Maybe Clara had sent it out to be cleaned. Maybe she'd misplaced it. There were 100 rational explanations. But in the context of everything else, its absence felt like a screaming siren. I quickly closed the box, my mind reeling. I needed more. I needed something irrefutable. My gaze swept the room and landed on the closet. Taking another steadying breath, I slid the door open. His side was neat, shirts arranged by color. Her side was the same. Dresses, blouses, sweaters, all perfectly organized. But then I saw it. On the top shelf, tucked away behind a stack of hat boxes, was a small, locked metal box. It was out of place in this room of soft fabrics and warm wood. It was cold, functional, and secretive. I took it down. It was heavier than it looked. I examined the lock. It was a simple combination lock, the kind you'd use for a locker. What would Clara, a woman who shared everything, need to lock away? My mind flashed back to my early days on the force, learning how to pick simple locks. It was a skill I hadn't used in decades. I found a sturdy paperclip on the desk in their home office and went to work. My fingers felt clumsy and stiff, but the old muscle memory was still there. After a few tense minutes, I felt the tumblers give way with a soft click. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I lifted the lid. Inside, there was no treasure, no hidden weapon, no bundles of cash. There was only a thin file folder. With trembling hands, I opened it. The first thing I saw was a yellowed newspaper clipping, dated 30 years ago, from a small town in rural Vermont. The headline read, "Tragic fire claims, local couple, orphaned infant survives." I read the article, a knot of ice forming in my stomach. The story was about a young couple who had died in a house fire. Their 6-month-old baby girl had been miraculously saved by a neighbor. The baby's name was listed as Amelia. I frowned, confused. What did this have to do with Clara? Beneath the clipping was a set of official-looking documents. They were adoption papers. My eyes scanned the page, and the world tilted on its axis. The papers were for a 6-month-old girl, an orphan from a fire in Vermont. Her adoptive parents were listed as the wonderful couple I'd known for years as Clara's mom and dad. But the name on the original birth certificate, the name that had been legally changed, was not Clara. It was Amelia. And then, at the very bottom of the folder, was one last document. A faded, folded birth certificate. I opened it carefully. It listed 2 names. 2 baby girls, born on the same day, to the same parents who had perished in that fire. Amelia and Clara. They were twins. I stumbled back, leaning against the dresser for support, the papers shaking in my hand. Identical twins, separated at birth after the fire. One, adopted and renamed Clara, raised in a loving home, eventually meeting and marrying my son. The other, what happened to the other one? The original Amelia? The puzzle pieces were crashing into place, forming a picture more horrifying than I could have ever imagined. The woman on the plane wasn't just a look-alike, she was family. A ghost from a past Clara had buried so deep she kept it under lock and key. A sister she had never mentioned. A twin who, for some unknown and terrifying reason, was now wearing Clara's face, holding her passport, and flying across the ocean under my son's command. I sank down onto the edge of the bed, the cold reality of the situation washing over me. This wasn't a random event. This was personal. This was a secret that had been festering for 30 years, and it had just exploded. The woman in seat 4 amperes wasn't just a threat to my son's flight. She was a threat to his entire life. And Clara, sleeping peacefully on the couch, wasn't a conspirator. She was the keeper of a secret so profound, so dangerous, that she had locked it away from the world, and from the man she loved. I had to know what she was so afraid of. I had to know what had happened to her long-lost sister, Amelia. I sat on the edge of their bed for what felt like an hour. The documents spread out beside me like pieces of a shattered life. The quiet hum of the house was a strange counterpoint to the roaring chaos in my mind. Twins. Clara had an identical twin sister. The words echoed, refusing to settle, refusing to feel real. Every memory I had of Clara, every shared laugh, every family dinner, was now cast in a new, unsettling light. Was her perpetual cheerfulness a mask? Was the perfect life she'd built with Leo a fortress designed to keep this secret locked away? My first instinct was to storm into the living room, wake her up, and demand answers. To lay the birth certificate and the adoption papers on the coffee table and watch her carefully constructed world crumble. But the detective in me, the part that had spent a lifetime reading people and navigating volatile situations, held me back. Clara was sick, vulnerable, and she was terrified. People don't lock away parts of their past unless they are running from something, or someone. A direct confrontation right now might only push her further into whatever shell she had built around herself. I needed information first. I needed leverage. I needed to understand the threat before I could disarm it. Carefully, I put the documents back into the metal box, my hands moving with a precision that belied my inner turmoil. I snapped the lid shut and reset the combination lock, a pathetic little defense against a secret that was already out. I placed the box back on the top shelf of the closet, exactly where I had found it, behind the hat boxes. I erased my fingerprints from her phone and placed it back on the charger. I left the bedroom as if I'd never been there, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. When I returned to the living room, Clara was still asleep. I watched her for a moment, my mind struggling to reconcile the peaceful image before me with the explosive secret I now carried. Who was she, really? Was she a victim in this? Or was there more to the story? I wrote a quick note. Went to the store to get you some ginger ale and crackers. Be back soon. Love, Frank. And left it on the coffee table. I needed to get out of that house. I needed to breathe. I drove, not back to my own quiet street, but towards the city, the familiar skyline of Boston rising up to meet me. My hands were on the wheel, but my mind was in Vermont 30 years ago in the smoky ruins of a house fire. What had happened to the other twin, the one who kept the name Amelia? Was she raised by the neighbor who saved her? Was she put into the foster system? The possibilities were endless, and each one felt darker than the last. There was only one person I knew who could help me cut through the red tape and find the answers I needed. Someone who owed me more than a few favors and knew how to navigate the labyrinth of state records and sealed files. My old partner, Sal Moretti. Sal and I had been through the ringer together for 20 years. We'd worked cases that had broken stronger men. He was retired now, too, living in a small condo in the North End, spending his days arguing with fishermen and making his own pasta sauce. He was old school, a bull in a china shop, but his instincts were second to none, and his network of contacts was legendary. I found him at his usual spot, a small cafe with steam-fogged windows and the rich aroma of espresso. He was holding court at a corner table, a newspaper spread before him, a half-eaten cannoli on a plate. When he saw me, his weathered face broke into a wide grin. "Frankie, my boy!" he boomed, his voice a gravelly roar that turned heads. "What brings you out of your suburban palace? Got tired of talking to the dog?" "Something like that, Sal," I said, pulling up a chair. The forced casualness in my voice sounded thin even to my own ears. He squinted at me, his sharp eyes missing nothing. The smile faded. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Oh, worse," I said, leaning in, my voice dropping to a near whisper. "I think I've seen 2 of them." For the next hour, I laid it all out for him. The phone call from Leo, the woman on the plane, the emerald pendant, my visit to the house, Clara, sick on the couch, and finally, the locked box and the secret it held. I told him everything, omitting no detail, my training kicking in as I presented the facts of the case, as if he were my captain and I was a rookie detective again. Sal listened intently, his cannoli forgotten, his bushy eyebrows knitted together in concentration. He didn't interrupt, didn't ask a single question until I was finished. When I finally fell silent, he leaned back in his chair and let out a long, low whistle. "Holy Mother," he breathed, running a hand over his bald head. "Frankie, you don't just step in it, you go for a full-body swim. A long-lost evil twin. It's like something out of a bad movie." "It's not a movie, Sal. This is real. My son is in the air with a woman who has his wife's face, and God knows what intentions. I need to know what happened to the other girl, Amelia." "You think this Amelia is the one on the plane? Who else could it be? An identical twin, Sal. It's the only thing that makes sense. But why? Why now? And how did she get Clara's passport, her pendant? Is Clara involved? Is she being threatened?" The questions poured out of me, a torrent of fear and confusion. Sal held up a hand. "Easy, Frankie. Easy. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. One step at a time. You need to find out who this Amelia Island, what her life has been like, where she ended up. That's why I'm here, Sal. The trail starts in Vermont 30 years ago. Adoption records, foster care files. A lot of that stuff is sealed tighter than a drum. I can't get to it, but you." A slow grin spread across Sal's face. "I might know a guy who knows a gal whose cousin works in the records department in Montpelier. It's a long shot, Frankie, and it'll cost me a case of my best homemade Chianti. Whatever it takes, Sal. I need to know. And I need to know fast. Leo's flight lands in London in less than 5 hours." Sal's demeanor turned serious again. He pulled out his phone, his thick fingers tapping on the screen. "All right. Give me the details. Names, dates, the town in Vermont. Everything you found in that box." I recited the information. my memory providing a perfect transcript of the documents. Sal grunted as he typed. Okay, I'm sending this off to my guy. I'm telling him it's life and death, which it might damn well be. I can't promise anything, Frankie. These things take time. Time is the one thing I don't have, I said, the weight of the ticking clock pressing down on me. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the comfortable quiet of two men who had faced death together and needed no words to understand each other's fear. What about the girl? Sal finally asked, his voice softer. Clara, what's your gut tell you? Is she in on it? I thought about her pale, exhausted face, the genuine illness in her eyes, the way she'd mumbled about just wanting to sleep. My gut tells me she's terrified, I said honestly. My gut tells me she's been running from this her whole life, but my training tells me not to rule anything out. She lied, Sal. For years, she's been lying to my son, to me. It was a lie of omission. Maybe. But it was a lie. And I need to know why. Sal nodded slowly. People do crazy things when they're scared. They build walls. They bury the past. But the past has a funny way of digging itself out, usually at the worst possible time. He looked me straight in the eye. You need to be careful, Frank. If this Amelia is as desperate as she sounds, she's unpredictable. And if she has a criminal history... He didn't need to finish the sentence. I knew what it meant. An unpredictable, desperate person with a criminal past and my daughter-in-law's face was a walking time bomb, and she was in the same city as my son. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. My heart leaped into my throat. I opened it. The message contained only a single, grainy photo. It was a picture of my house. My house, taken from the street, just moments ago. There was a dark sedan parked across the road, barely visible in the shadows. Beneath the photo was a single line of text. We know you're looking. Stop, or the next photo will be of the inside. A chill, colder than any Boston winter, washed over me. This wasn't just about the past anymore. They were watching me, now, and they were threatening me. My investigation had already tripped a wire. I showed the phone to Sal. He swore under his breath, his face hardening into the old cop's mask I knew so well. They're here, Frankie, he said, his voice a low growl. This isn't just some ghost from Vermont. They're in your backyard. The message was clear. This was no longer just a family secret. I had stumbled into something far bigger, and far more dangerous than I could have possibly imagined. The image on my phone burned into my brain. My house, my sanctuary, violated. The threat was unambiguous, a cold, sharp promise of violence. Stop, or the next photo will be of the inside. My blood ran cold, then hot with a familiar, righteous anger I hadn't felt in years. They weren't just watching. They were closing in. This wasn't just about Amelia impersonating Clara anymore. This was a coordinated effort. The use of "we" in the text message was not lost on me. Amelia wasn't working alone. Sal, they're trying to scare me off, I said, my voice tight with a fury I was struggling to contain. They know I'm digging. Oh? Sal's eyes were narrowed, scanning the street outside the cafe window as if he could spot the threat himself. This changes things, Frankie. This isn't just a family drama. A blackmailing twin is one thing. A coordinated team sending threats is a whole other level of professional. This stinks of organized crime. He was right. The sophistication of the threat, the surveillance. It was too clean, too deliberate for a lone actor, even a desperate one. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots. A house fire 30 years ago. A separated twin with an unknown history. A sophisticated surveillance team. What, in God's name, had Clara's family been involved in? My guy in Vermont just got back to me, Sal said, looking down at his phone, his thumb scrolling rapidly. His expression grew darker with every passing second. Oh, Frankie, you're not gonna like this. Just give it to me, Sal. All of it. He took a deep breath. Okay. So, After the fire, the girls were separated. The neighbor who pulled them out was an old woman who couldn't care for them both. She kept one for a few days before Child Protective Services stepped in. That was Clara. She went into the system and was adopted pretty quickly by the family, you know. A clean file, a good life. But Amelia's story is different. He paused, and I braced myself. She was also taken in by CPS, but she wasn't adopted. She bounced around the foster system for years. Different homes, different towns. It's a rough life, Frankie, you know that. It makes kids hard. Or it breaks them. What happened to her? I pressed, a knot of pity and dread tightening in my stomach. She aged out of the system at 18, and then she fell off the grid for a while. But she resurfaced a few years later, in a big way. Sal looked up from his phone, his eyes meeting mine. She has a sheet, Frank. A long one. She started with petty stuff shoplifting, check fraud, but she graduated. She got picked up for armed robbery in Chicago 6 years ago. Did 3 years in state prison. Got out on parole, violated it, and disappeared. There's been a warrant out for her arrest for the last 2 years. Armed robbery. Prison. A fugitive from the law. The words hit me like body blows. This wasn't just a troubled woman looking for a handout. This was a hardened criminal. A professional. And she was on a plane with my son. But that's not the worst of it, Frankie, Sal continued, his voice grim. The robbery she was convicted for. She had a partner, a guy named Marcus Thorne, a nasty piece of work. Known associate of the O'Malley crime family out of South Boston. He was the muscle, she was the brains. He got 10 years. He's still inside. The O'Malley family. My blood turned to ice. I knew the name well. They were ruthless, old-school Irish mob, into everything from loan sharking to gun running. If Amelia was connected to them, then the threat I had just received on my phone wasn't an empty one. It was a promise from an organization that didn't make idle threats. So the we in the text message, I began, is probably the O'Malleys, Sal finished. They're protecting their asset. Or maybe she's doing a job for them right now. And you, my friend, just stuck your nose right in the middle of it. The pieces were coming together, forming a mosaic of pure terror. This wasn't a simple case of a long-lost twin wanting a piece of her sister's life. This was a calculated, criminal operation. Amelia wasn't just escaping her past, she was likely on her way to commit another crime, or to escape justice for one she had already committed. Using Clara's perfect, clean identity was her golden ticket. A new life, a clean passport, a ticket to anywhere in the world, no questions asked. And London, with its international banking and transport hubs, was the perfect place to disappear. What about the parents? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Clara's, their parents, the ones who died in the fire. Sal scrolled further down his phone. Here's where it gets really murky. The fire was officially ruled an accident. Faulty wiring, a tragic story. But my guy's contact, he says there were always whispers in town. The father, a man named Daniel Quinn, was supposedly into some bad stuff. Gambling debts. Rumors he'd borrowed money from the wrong people and couldn't pay it back. People from out of town, Boston plates, had been seen around his property in the weeks before the fire. The O'Malleys. I breathed. It was 30 years ago, Frankie. The trail is ice cold. There's no proof. But if you were a betting man, you'd have to wonder if that fire was really an accident. Maybe they came to collect. Things got out of hand, and they burned the house down to cover their tracks, not realizing there were 2 infants inside. A horrifying theory began to form in my mind. What if the O'Malleys had been responsible for the death of the twins' parents? What if Amelia, growing up hard in the foster system, somehow found her way back to the very people who had orphaned her? Maybe she didn't know. Or maybe she did. Maybe this was some kind of twisted revenge, or a way of claiming what she felt was hers by birthright, a life in the criminal underworld. I felt sick. Clara, my sweet, gentle Clara, was the daughter of a man who had gotten tangled up with the mob. Her entire life, the one she had so carefully built with my son, was predicated on a lie born from a tragedy she couldn't even remember. She wasn't just hiding a sister. She was hiding a legacy of violence and crime. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Leo. Just got the all clear from air traffic control. Starting our descent into Heathrow. Should be on the ground in 30 minutes. Everything's been quiet back here. Any news? 30 minutes. The countdown had begun. In 30 minutes, that plane would be on the ground, and a violent fugitive with my daughter-in-law's face would be walking free in a foreign country, potentially to meet up with a network of dangerous criminals. Sal, I have to stop her, I said, standing up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I can't let her just walk off that plane. What are you going to do, Frank? Call the airline? Tell them there's a woman on board who looks like the pilot's wife but is actually her long-lost criminal twin? They'll think you're a lunatic. They might even ground Leo for making a security threat. You could destroy your son's career. He was right. I couldn't risk it. A panic in the air could have devastating consequences. I was trapped. But then, an idea began to form. A desperate, high-risk plan born from 35 years of working outside the lines. I can't call the airline, I said, my mind racing. But I can call someone else. You still have that contact at Interpol? The guy in London? Inspector Davies? Sal's eyes widened as he understood what I was planning. Frankie, you can't be serious. You want to call in an international favor based on this? Davies will hang up on you. He owes me, Sal. Remember that exchange program, the counterfeit ring case back in '08? I saved his bacon. He owes me a listen, at the very least. I need to get to London Met Police. I need them at that gate when she deplanes. Not as a security threat, but as a quiet takedown. They have a warrant for her arrest. It's a legitimate pickup, but they'll need proof it's her. Her passport says she's Clara Thompson, a respectably American citizen. I've got the photo Leo sent me, I said, my thoughts moving faster now. And her criminal file from Chicago will have a mugshot. They're identical twins. It will be enough to detain her, to question her. It's all I need. A chance to get her in a room and break her down. Sal looked at me, a mixture of horror and admiration on his face. You're crazy, Frankie. You know that, right? This could blow up in your face in 1,000 different ways. It's the only play I have, Sal, I said, pulling out my phone to find Davy's old number, praying it was still active. My son, my daughter-in-law, their entire future is on the line. I'm not going to let some ghost from the past destroy everything they've built. This ends today. I dialed the number, the international ringing tone sounding like a ticking time bomb in my ear. I was about to bypass official channels, call in a 30-year-old favor, and try to orchestrate an arrest from 3,000 miles away, all while a major crime family was watching my every move. It was the biggest gamble of my life, and the clock was ticking. The phone rang 4 times, each tone stretching into an agonizing eternity. I was half expecting it to go to voicemail, for this last, desperate gambit to fail before it even began. Then, a crisp British accent, laced with the weariness of a career cop, came on the line. Davies. Arthur, it's Frank Morrison. There was a pause. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't remember. Then, a low chuckle. Frank Morrison. Good God, man. I haven't heard that name in a decade. I thought you'd be off fishing somewhere, enjoying your retirement. Don't tell me you're calling to cash in that marker from the counterfeit case. I was hoping you'd forgotten. I wish I had, Arthur, I said, my voice grim. I'm calling because I'm in trouble. My family is in trouble, and I need a favor. A big one. I didn't waste any time. I laid out the entire situation for him, the words tumbling out of me in a controlled, urgent rush. I told him about Leo, the flight, the woman in 4 amperes, the identical twin, and most importantly, Amelia's criminal record and the active warrant for her arrest. I explained that her passport and all her documentation identified her as Clara Thompson, my son's wife. A clean identity she was using as a cover. So let me get this straight, Frank, Davies said, his voice now stripped of all its earlier humor. You're telling me that a U.S. fugitive, a convicted armed robber, is on a commercial flight that is, as we speak, about to land at Heathrow. And she's traveling under the legitimate identity of the pilot's wife? That's exactly what I'm telling you. And your proof is a blurry photograph from a mobile phone and a hunch from a retired Boston detective? My proof, I said, my voice hardening, is an active felony warrant out of the state of Illinois. Her name is Amelia Quinn. I can have my partner email you her criminal file and mugshot right now. You'll see she is a perfect match for the woman on that plane. All I'm asking is that you have a couple of your plainclothes officers meet the flight at the gate. Detain her quietly for questioning based on the warrant. Don't make a scene. Just get her into a room. Once she's off that plane and away from my son, I don't care what happens. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing, considering the monumental breach of protocol I was asking for. He was putting his career on the line based on the word of a man he hadn't spoken to in 10 years. This is highly irregular, Frank, he said finally. If you're wrong about this, if this woman is who her passport says she is, the political fallout will be immense. A pilot's wife, a U.S. citizen, wrongfully detained at a British airport on the word of a foreign ex-cop. It would be a diplomatic incident. I'm not wrong, Arthur, I said, my voice filled with a conviction that came from the deepest part of my gut. I've spent my life reading people, and I am telling you, this is real. Send me your email address. The file will be in your inbox in the next 2 minutes. He gave me the address, and I relayed it to Sal, who was already working his magic, his fingers flying across his phone. File sent. Sal confirmed a moment later. Check your email, Arthur, I said, and look at the arrival time for transatlantic flight 227 from Boston. It's landing in less than 20 minutes. All right, Frank, Davies sighed, the sound of resignation and high-stakes gambling in his voice. For you, and for what you did for me back in '08, I'll make the call. I'll have a team meet the flight. But Frank, if this goes sideways, we've never had this conversation. I'll deny everything. Understood, I said, a wave of relief so powerful it almost buckled my knees, washing over me. Thank you, Arthur. I owe you. Yes, you do, he said, and the line went dead. The first part of the plan was in motion. But now came the second, and arguably more difficult part. I had to go back to that house and face Clara. I couldn't protect her, or my son, if I didn't know the whole truth. I needed to know what she was hiding, how Amelia had gotten her passport and her pendant, and why she had kept this secret for so long. The conversation was going to be one of the hardest of my life. I thanked Sal, who clapped me on the shoulder with a worried look. Be careful, Frankie. A cornered animal is a dangerous one. You don't know how she'll react. When I arrived back at their house, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the lawn. The note I'd left was still on the coffee table, next to an unopened bottle of ginger ale and a box of crackers I'd actually bought on the way over. A small piece of normalcy in a world gone mad. Clara was awake, sitting up on the couch, still wrapped in blankets. She looked a little better, some color having returned to her cheeks. Frank, you didn't have to, she said, her voice still weak but grateful. That was so thoughtful. It was nothing, I said, sitting down in the armchair opposite her, my heart heavy with what I was about to do. I couldn't ease into it. I had to be direct. Clara, we need to talk. Her smile faltered. She saw the look on my face, the absence of my usual warmth, the hard-set line of my jaw. She clutched her blanket tighter. Is everything okay? Is it Leo? Leo's fine, I said, but he's not alone. Clara, who is Amelia? The reaction was instantaneous and profound. It was as if I had uttered a curse, a forbidden word that had the power to undo her completely. Every trace of color drained from her face. Her eyes, wide with a terror so pure it was breathtaking, stared at me as if I were a ghost. Her breath hitched. and she started to tremble, a violent, uncontrollable shaking that had nothing to do with her illness. I don't know what you're talking about, she whispered, the lie flimsy and pathetic. I didn't raise my voice. I kept my tone even, the way I would in an interrogation room with a scared witness. Don't lie to me, Clara, not now. I know. I know about the fire. I know about the adoption. I know you have a sister, an identical twin sister. That broke her. A sob, a raw, strangled sound of grief and fear, tore from her throat. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders heaving. The dam of secrets she had maintained for her entire life had just burst, and the flood was devastating. I let her cry for a few minutes, the sound filling the quiet room. When her sobs began to subside into ragged gasps, I spoke again, my voice softer this time. Clara, there is a woman on your husband's flight to London who looks exactly like you. She is using your name, your passport, and she is wearing your emerald pendant. I believe that woman is your sister, Amelia. I need you to tell me everything, right now, because you are not the only one in danger. Leo was in danger too. Slowly, she lifted her head, her face a mess of tears and mascara. You don't understand, she wept, her voice breaking. I had to. I had no choice. Tell me, I urged gently. And so the story poured out of her. It was a story of a life lived in the shadow of a ghost. She told me she had found the locked box when she was a teenager, searching for Christmas presents. The truth had terrified her. Her parents, when confronted, had admitted it all, begging her never to seek out her sister. They said it was for her own protection. For years, she had honored their wish. She had built a new life, met Leo, and for the first time, felt truly safe. But the past, as Sal had said, had a way of digging itself out. She found me, Clara whispered, her eyes staring at a point on the wall, reliving the horror. About 4 years ago, just after Leo and I got married. She just showed up at the door one day. She looked just like me, but harder. There was a coldness in her eyes. She knew everything about me. My name, my husband where I worked. She'd been watching me. My blood ran cold. Amelia had been in the picture for years. What did she want? I asked. Money, Clara said, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. At first, it was just small amounts. A few $100s here, 1,000 there. She said it was to get back on her feet. She told me stories about her life, about the horrible foster homes, the things she had to do to survive. I felt so guilty, Frank. I had everything, and she had nothing. So I gave it to her. I thought I was helping, but it didn't stop, did it? She shook her head, fresh tears welling in her eyes. It got worse. The demands became bigger. She started asking for tens of thousands of dollars. She knew about Leo's salary, our savings. She started threatening me. She said if I didn't pay, she would go to Leo and tell him everything. That I was a liar, the daughter of some low-life gambler who got his family killed. She said she'd invent stories, tell him I was in on it, that I had a criminal past too. She said she would destroy my life. The emerald pendant, the passport, it all made sense now. The trip to London was the last straw, Clara continued, her voice trembling. She came to me last week. She was different, desperate, panicked. She said she needed to get out of the country, that she was in some kind of trouble. She demanded my passport, my jewelry, a suitcase of my clothes. She wanted to become me. She said if I didn't do it, she wouldn't just tell Leo. She would hurt him. The threat against Leo was the final piece. Clara had been backed into an impossible corner, forced to choose between her secret and her husband's safety. She told me to pretend to be sick today. Clara sobbed. She said her. Her associates would be watching the house to make sure I complied. She said if I tried to call the police, Leo would never make it to London. So I did what she said. I gave her everything. I didn't know what else to do. I was so scared. I finally understood. Clara wasn't a conspirator. She was a victim, trapped in the most sophisticated and cruel blackmail scheme I had ever encountered. My heart ached for her, for the years of fear she had lived with, for the impossible choice she had been forced to make. I reached out and took her hand. It was ice cold. "It's not your fault, Clara," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You were protecting your family, but it's over now. We're going to end this." Just then, my phone rang. The screen displayed an international number. It was Leo. He was on the ground in London. I put the phone on speaker, my eyes never leaving Clara's terrified face. "Dad?" Leo's voice was tight with anxiety. "We've landed. We're taxiing to the gate. Is Clara okay? Did you find anything?" "She's right here, son," I said. "And she's okay. We know everything." Before I could say another word, Clara lunged for the phone, her voice a desperate, pleading cry. "Leo! Honey, are you okay? You have to be careful. She's there. Don't go near her." "It's okay, Clara," I said, trying to calm her. "I've already made arrangements. The police are waiting for her at the gate." But as I said the words, a horrifying new thought struck me, a possibility so chilling it made every other threat seem insignificant. Amelia wasn't stupid. She was a professional. She would have a contingency plan. What if she wasn't planning to just walk off the plane? What if her plan involved not escaping from Leo, but getting to him? A pilot's wife has a certain level of access, a certain level of trust. "Leo!" I said, my voice sharp with a new, terrifying urgency. "Listen to me very carefully. You cannot let her get near you. Do you hear me? She may try to use her identity as your wife to get to you, maybe even to get into the cockpit. You have to treat her as a hostile threat. Do not, under any circumstances, let her get close." There was a moment of silence from the other end. Then Leo's voice came back, no longer just anxious, but filled with a sudden, dawning horror. "Oh my God, Dad," he whispered. "She's not in her seat. Sarah just called me from the galley. Seat 4 Amperes is empty. She got up a few minutes ago to use the restroom, and she never came back." A collective silence fell over the living room, thick and suffocating. Clara's desperate gasp was the only sound. "She's not in her seat." The words echoed in my head, a drumbeat of imminent disaster. My plan, my carefully orchestrated trap with the London police, was already falling apart. It was predicated on one simple assumption, that Amelia would act like a normal passenger, deplane, and walk into our snare. But I had underestimated her. She wasn't just a fugitive, she was a predator. And she was currently loose on an airplane my son was in command of. "Leo, where could she have gone?" I demanded, my mind frantically trying to map out the interior of a 787. "The plane is a closed environment. She can't have just vanished." "I don't know, Dad." Leo's voice was strained, the professional pilot's calm being rapidly eroded by a son's terror. "Sarah said she went to the forward lavatory, the one near the business class galley and the cockpit door. She's checking the other restrooms now, but..." He didn't need to finish. We both knew. She wasn't hiding in a bathroom. She was positioning herself. A pilot's wife, looking pale and concerned, waiting near the cockpit as the plane docks at the gate. Who would question her? Who would stop her from approaching her husband to say hello? It was the perfect cover. "Leo, they're about to connect the jet bridge, aren't they?" "Any second now, Dad. The ground crew is in position." "You need to listen to me," I said, my voice dropping into the command tone I used to use at crime scenes. "There is no time to explain the full situation to your crew without causing a massive panic. You are the captain. Your word is law on that plane. You need to get on the intercom to your lead flight attendant, Sarah. You tell her there is a potential security threat with the passenger in 4 Amperes. Tell her the passenger is an imposter and is to be considered dangerous. Give them a simple order. Under no circumstances is that cockpit door to be opened after you dock. Not for anyone. and they are to subtly block her from getting near it. Use code if you have to, but make them understand the severity. They'll think I've lost my mind, Dad, Leo protested, his voice tight with desperation. They trust you, son, I shot back. They will follow your command. There's no other choice. You have to isolate her and keep her away from that door. Clara, who had been listening with a hand clapped over her mouth, her eyes wide with horror, suddenly spoke, her voice surprisingly firm. Tell them she's armed, Leo. You don't know if she island, you have to assume the worst. When she took my things, she had a gun. My blood ran cold. A gun. Clara had been too terrified to even mention it. This escalated the situation from a simple arrest to a potential hostage crisis. Leo, did you hear that? Your wife says she may be armed. This is now a level 4 security threat. You need to inform your crew immediately. Okay, Dad, okay, Leo said, his breathing quickening. I'm doing it now. I heard the click of the intercom, and his voice, now stripped of all emotion and filled with pure authoritative command, addressing his crew. The line didn't go dead. He'd left the channel open. I could hear the controlled chaos beginning to unfold. My mind was racing. The London police were waiting at the gate, expecting a quiet pickup of a woman from seat 4 amperes. They had no idea she was now a potential armed threat, loose on the aircraft. If they boarded the plane expecting a simple arrest, they could walk into an ambush. Arthur, I muttered, frantically searching for Inspector Davies' number again. I had to warn him. I had to update the threat level. I stabbed at the screen, my fingers feeling fat and clumsy. As I was dialing, Clara grabbed my arm, her eyes wild. Frank, what if this was her plan all along? What if it was never about escaping? What if it's about Leo? Her question hung in the air, a horrifying, unspoken possibility. We had assumed Amelia's motive was escape, that using Leo's flight was a means to an end. But what if Leo was the end? What if this was some twisted act of revenge against the sister who had the life she never did? To destroy Clara, you wouldn't just expose her secrets. You would take away the one thing she loved most in the world. You would take her husband. The thought was so monstrous, so evil, that it almost paralyzed me. The O'Malleys, Amelia's criminal associates. What if they weren't just helping her escape? What if they wanted to create a major international incident? What would be more impactful than taking a pilot hostage, or worse, taking down a plane? The phone connected. Davies. His voice was impatient. My team is in place. What is it, Frank? Arthur, the situation has changed. The target is not in her seat. We have reason to believe she may be armed and is attempting to approach the cockpit. Your team cannot board that plane. I repeat, do not board. Armed? Davies swore loudly. Frank, what the hell have you gotten me into? This is a major security operation now. I have to call in the Specialist Firearms Command. We have to lock down the entire terminal. Do it, Arthur. But you have to be careful. My son is on that plane. The imposter is his wife's double. She could use that to create confusion, to get close to him. Through my own phone, still connected to Leo, I heard Sarah's voice, hushed but urgent, coming from the cockpit speaker. Captain, we have a visual. She's by the forward galley. She's telling everyone she's just waiting to surprise you. She seems calm, but there's something in her eyes. We're keeping our distance, blocking the aisle with the service cart. Good, Sarah. Leo's voice was pure steel. Keep her contained. Do not engage. What's the status of the jet bridge? It's connected, Captain. The ground staff has signaled for the door to open. This was the critical moment. The door was the gateway. Once it was open, the situation could spill out into the terminal. The police would move in. Amelia would be trapped. And a trapped, armed, desperate criminal is the most dangerous kind of all. Leo, I said, speaking clearly into the phone. The London police know. They are not boarding. They are securing the terminal. But you need to control that door. Can you delay the disembarking process? I can try, he said. I can tell the ground crew we have a minor mechanical issue to resolve before we can let passengers off. That should buy us a few minutes. Buy us time for what, Frank? Clara cried, her face pale. She's trapped in there with him. She was right. We had contained the threat, but we had also created a pressure cooker. Amelia was on that plane with 300 innocent passengers and a full flight crew, and she would soon realize that something was very wrong. She would realize the police were waiting, and she had a gun. A new plan began to form in my mind, a terrible, risky idea, but the only one that felt right. We couldn't let the police handle this alone. They didn't understand the psychological dynamics at play. They didn't know about the 30 years of resentment, the sisterly rage that was likely fueling Amelia. But I did. And more importantly, Clara did. Clara, I said, turning to her, my voice low and intense. I need you to be strong. Stronger than you've ever been in your life. Do you still have your laptop? She nodded numbly, pointing to a canvas bag by the desk. Get it, I commanded. We're going to make a video call. A video call? To who? To your sister, I said, my mind already working through the logistics. Inspector Davies can get a phone to the flight crew. They can connect to the plane's Wi-Fi. We are going to put you, her sister, face to face with her. We are going to de-escalate this. You are the only one who can. Clara looked at me as if I had just asked her to walk into a fire. No, Frank, I can't. I can't face her. After everything she's done, I'm terrified of her. I know you are, I said, taking her by the shoulders, forcing her to look at me. But your husband's life is on that plane. The lives of hundreds of people are on that plane. The police will see a hostage taker. You will see a sister. You are the only person in the world who shares her face. You are the only one who might be able to get through to her. You have to try. I could see the war raging in her eyes, the terror, the grief, but also a tiny, flickering ember of strength. She had been a victim for years, pushed around, blackmailed, and broken. But I saw something else in her now. The same resilience I saw in my late wife. The same protective instinct I saw in my son. She took a deep, shuddering breath and nodded. Okay, Frank, she whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. Okay, I'll do it. I immediately got back on the phone with Davies, explaining my audacious plan. He was apoplectic at first. Are you insane, Frank? Put a civilian, the victim no less, on a live line with an armed suspect? It's against every protocol in the book. Protocols go out the window when you have a plane full of potential hostages, Arthur, I argued. Your men go in with guns blazing, and you risk a massacre. Let me try my way first. Give me 5 minutes. We put her face on a screen. We distract her. We confuse her. In that moment of confusion, your men might have a chance to move in. It's a better tactical option than a full frontal assault. There was another long, tense pause. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head as he weighed the immense risk against the potential reward. 5 minutes, Frank, he said finally, his voice tight. You get 5 minutes. I'm getting a device to the captain now. But the second I think your plan is failing, my men are going in. And God help us all. The line went dead. The stage was set. In a quiet suburban living room thousands of miles away, a terrified woman was about to confront the ghost who had haunted her entire life, in a desperate attempt to save the man they both, in their own twisted ways, seemed to claim. The next few minutes were the most agonizingly tense of my life. A surreal fusion of high-tech police work and raw, intimate family drama playing out across an ocean. While I waited for Davies to confirm the communication link was ready, I worked with Clara. I set up her laptop on the coffee table, the webcam's small, dark eye staring at us like an unblinking witness. Clara, when we connect, she's going to try to manipulate you, I said, kneeling in front of her, trying to coach her as if she were a rookie detective about to enter an interrogation room. She'll use your guilt, your fear. She'll blame you for her life. You cannot let her get under your skin. We have one objective here: to distract her and keep her talking, to make her focus on you, on the screen, and not on the crew or the door. Clara nodded, but her face was ashen. She was wringing her hands, her knuckles white. What do I say to her, Frank? After all these years, what can I possibly say? You tell her the truth, I said softly. Tell her you know she's in trouble and you want to help. Don't be accusatory. Be a sister. It's the one thing she's never had. It might be the only thing that can break through that wall of rage. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Davies. Device is with the captain. They are ready. Stand by for the call. I gave Clara a final, steadying look. It's time. You can do this. I accepted the incoming video call request on the laptop. The screen flickered, and then an image resolved. It was the interior of the 787's galley, shaky and chaotic. A young flight attendant, her face pale with fear, was holding the phone. In the background, I could see the service cart barricading the aisle. And then, the phone was turned. There she was, Amelia. Seeing her on a live video feed was 1,000 times more jarring than the still photograph. It was Clara's face, her exact eyes, her nose, the shape of her lips, but it was animated by a lifetime of anger and hardship. Her eyes, unlike Clara's warm, gentle ones, were cold, sharp, and constantly moving, assessing every angle. She wasn't wearing the emerald pendant anymore. It was likely tucked away. She held herself with a coiled, predatory tension, like a wolf cornered. She hadn't drawn a weapon, but her hand was ominously tucked into the pocket of her jacket. Well, well, Amelia said, a slow, cruel smile spreading across her face as she saw Clara on the screen. Her voice was eerily similar to Clara's, but with a rougher, harder edge. Look at you, safe and sound in your cozy little house. I was wondering when you'd show up to the party, sis. Clara flinched at the word sis, as if it were a physical blow. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Clara, talk to her, I whispered urgently, staying out of the camera's view. Clara took a shaky breath. Amelia, she began, her voice barely audible. What are you doing? Please, just stop this. Amelia let out a short, harsh laugh. Stop this? I'm just getting started. For 30 years, you've been living my life. You got the loving parents, the nice house, the college education. You got the perfect, handsome husband. Her eyes flickered with a venomous jealousy. You got everything. And what did I get? A different foster home every year. Eating garbage to survive, learning to fight before I could even read. You owe me, Clara. You owe me all of it. This isn't the way, Amelia, Clara pleaded, tears streaming down her face. I can help you. We can get you a lawyer. We can figure this out. But not like this. Please, don't hurt anyone. Hurt anyone? Amelia's smile widened, a terrifying, mirthless expression. I'm not going to hurt anyone. As long as I get what I want, they're going to let me walk out of here. And my dear brother-in-law, the good captain, is going to be my insurance policy. My heart stopped. This was it. Her endgame. She was going to try to take Leo hostage. Through my own phone, which was still connected to Leo's open line in the cockpit, I heard his sharp intake of breath. He was hearing all of this. He was listening to this stranger with his wife's face threaten his life. Your men are in position, Arthur, I whispered into my phone to Davies. They are. His voice came back, tight and low. They have eyes on her through the jet bridge window. They see she's distracted by the call, but they can't move until they have a clear shot, Frank. It's too risky with the other passengers. On the laptop screen, Amelia took a step closer to the flight attendant holding the phone. You know, for years I dreamed of this, of meeting you. I thought maybe we could be a family. But when I found you, you were so perfect, so happy, and you had no idea I even existed. The guilt was eating you alive, wasn't it? It was so easy to make you pay, a little bit at a time. But this time the debt is due in full. I had to keep her talking, to keep her focused on the screen.